Welcome to Tone Talks. How's everybody doing today? This is Attorney Antonio Moore coming to you from Tone Talks, here to have the weekly show. I appreciate everybody tuning in here on this Sunday. This is a bit of a pop-up. I was going to do it tomorrow, but I'm going to go ahead and do the show today. The topic is African Americans are more than just Africans in America. The context of that sits on the discussion that me, myself, and Yvette Carnell have set off around American descent of slavery. For all those people that are new to this whole concept, American descent of slavery, it predates FBA or whatever they call that. ADOS was, it kind of started with me and Yvette trying to talk about wealth and politics and realizing that you guys don't really understand yourself outside of yourself. Let's talk about it. So as we get into this discussion, again, African Americans are more than just Africans in America. I wrote a piece, and I wrote that back in 2018. So this is kind of where we started seeing a publication version of ADOS. And inside of that discussion, we were talking about the fact that we aren't really African because Africa is a continent, and then we aren't really just defined in the characteristic of anything without understanding our lineal background. And what you found is that a lot of people struggled with the truth of the matter, which is that American descendants of slavery are their own people standalone, and that quintessentially we are American. And that is not the case for someone like Barack Obama, who's Kenyan American in the same way. It is not the case for someone who's Haitian American. No disrespect to them being American, but our claim here is very different as it comes through a lineal slavery and oppression that has not been recognized properly. And in addition, what has happened as a result is an entire confusion through movies like we saw with Sinners with the Chinese, and we'll talk about that today on this show, and the pressures that are brought to make people of color all the same. And the doorway that comes through is kind of like African American, because we start talking about immigration as though we have family outside of the country when we don't. We forget our own politics in pursuit of politics that small subgroup, niche groups, whether it be Haitian Americans, Jamaican Americans, Nigerian Americans, should pursue on their own. And then, I don't know, we got to decide whether we support based on our political interests. And I think for a lot of people that was confusing back in 2018, and they're acting like they understand today. But I decided to start a Substack, and I started that Substack to begin to discuss things in article context, and I'm bringing back some of the articles I've written the last decade. Please go subscribe to my Substack. I just started it a few weeks ago, and in that Substack, I'm bringing up articles, and one of the articles that I brought back was this one here: African Americans are more than just Africans in America. In the chat, how many people have read this article? If you have not read the full article, please go do that. I'm going to take 2 excerpts today and talk about this thing and talk about being African American, quote unquote, which really means ADOS, American descent of slavery in America, and how the confusion that came out of this led to you being confused in a way where you don't have an identity here. It's kind of like this right here. So to be African American in America today, there's 2 counter pressures, and there's probably a couple more, but just for simplicity's sake, there's on one side this Pan-Africanism to push people where almost 99% of you will never visit any continent, any part of the continent of Africa, and no country there. And the other 1% that do might not be fully ADOS, or 3%, 5%. If you are fully ADOS, let me put it differently. I don't believe that 99.5% of you will ever visit there. And if you do, it'll be for a week, maybe 10 days, 8 days. And that's a very, very small number. Maybe for that go back to Ghana trip for the tourism. But yet you define yourself through Pan-Africanism as a result of this acceptance of this term that was introduced in the 80s post Jesse Jackson of African American, and don't understand the flaw in the term is that it includes a continent and a country for a specific identity, which makes no sense. So then you have people who are Kenyan American, who are Nigerian American, who then use the term in the generic sense to then have a doorway into your literal lineage here in America. By that, I mean, are they African American because they come from the continent? Yes. Are they African American in the context of coming from the lineage of slavery? No. But what happened is you became African American, they became African American, and they became Kenyan American, and they became Igbo American, and they became just Kenyan or just Nigerian. So as I pull up this pressure, what has happened is this middle point has squeezed to nothingness, and it's left ADOS, quote unquote, African Americans, quote unquote, Black Americans with little to no identity. You eat anything, you do anything with your hair, you do anything with your outfits. You don't care whether the Sinners movie shows the Chinese that own the stores that were your economic prison guards. I'll talk about that in a second. If they showed a movie in Clarksdale, you're clapping and you don't understand. You shouldn't be clapping. You should be protesting because they are the reason that Clarksdale looks the way Clarksdale looks today. They stole your economic progress. But Ryan Coogler showed them as your friends and family in the movie, and you clapping, and your life been destroyed behind it.
Chinese American, and they owned grocery stores, in the Mississippi Delta. But the they served both Black folks and white folks, but they mostly served the Black population. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's who they were around. You know what I mean? That was their people.
Their argument, very dramatically, was we Chinese people, being pure Chinese, deserve protection from the contamination of Blackness.
You know what I mean?
I heard it in the lingo. I heard.
Yeah. So in the screenplay, Bo and the twins are friends. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not.
Yeah.
And Grace is they family basically. You know.
Deserve protection from the contamination of Blackness.
So the people of color thing on one side, the Pan-Africanism on the other side, and everybody saying you don't exist without saying it, but saying it backwards because we all the same. We all people of color and we all African American. Okay. Now you get where we going. So the context of this show is African Americans are more than just Africans in America. And that isn't to say I'm saying that you're more than an African person. I guess they don't use that term. Let me clear this up before I get into the show. I'm saying that you are more than an African, whatever that means, in America. Let me clear this up. So there's an article that came out before I wrote my Your Web, and in a part I was answering the ignorance of the article called Fortress Black in America. It comes out a few weeks before I write the Your Web piece I was referencing in 2018. In it, you have a specific reference of why African American makes no sense. By a Kenyan person here in America, an admission to a dishonesty that sits at the very base of this identity called African American. And that dishonesty is that they call themselves African in Africa, that there's some kind of unity in Africa, that Africa operates almost like a country when actually it operates as a damn Lord of the Rings land with all these tribes, all these different currencies, all these different passports. In Kenya, racism was a concept that existed only in books and never in conversation. This is what the Kenyan writer is saying. Tribalism is what we live with daily. Our identity was and still is ingrained in ethnicity, not in skin color. It explains why most Africans experience being called Black or African for the first time when they come to America. So they don't even use that terminology in Africa. But when they come here, what it allows them to do is not start at the bottom. So you say, ADOS people are at the bottom, but culturally we're at the top because we built this place. So what they come into is they don't have to operate in the framework of coming from a developing country, in the framework of being new to the country. They get to start off writing shows, despite knowing nothing more than what's going on in Senegal, like Issa Rae. They get to start off acting on screen in films as if they're ADOS. But the reality is this: our identity was and still is ingrained in ethnicity, not in skin color. It explains why most Africans experience being called Black or African for the first time when they come to America. Neither Black nor African are conscious identity markers for Africans in Africa. One is Tatia, Igbo, Shona. So any joke references to racism in Black American sitcoms flew right over our head. In the article, I talk about a writer, Adichie, who actually says, I don't even want to raise my kid Black at all, We don't know nothing about that. Somebody said must be nice. Somebody said that's the problem. No, the real problem is that you don't know that that's the truth. You are aligning yourself with people that you have no alignment with, under the pretense that Africa is a country. But then when I tell you that, you'll say, I don't treat it like a country, but you call yourself African American because you've been socialized to. You've been socialized to not have an identity in a country that's built on nationalism and identity all around the place. You don't see white folks running around here talking about they're European American unless they come from Europe very recently. You just don't see it. Okay. So again, African Americans are more than just Africans in America. The article, I'm going to read 2 excerpts from this article just to frame it. Again, please go subscribe to my Substack, 310-388-3499. Please tune in and call in and tell everybody else that we on now. This is a pop-up show, so we're going to have this discussion. They'll just catch it later. African American life is defined by the shadow of its brutal domestic history. Born into a lineage forged in the iron of slave shackles and outlined by Federal Housing Administration maps drawn in the red blood drained from Black American communities over centuries, Black Americans are a people of dual inheritance, descendants of both slave and by force slave owner, who have been deliberately denied access to wealth and opportunity for nearly 400 years. As stark as this description may seem, it may still understate how deeply the disadvantage of American descendants of slavery helped build the foundation of the world's wealthiest nation. The descendants of American slavery, what we now call ADOS, literally served as the currency that underwrote the early American economy. So the most valuable asset in America was the slave body. When you put 3 years of training into a field slave, he was worth more than a house. The bodies of slaves were worth more than all the railroads, all the steel mines, everything together. Your body was currency, but not for you. In fact, you had 3/5 of a vote that you didn't even get to use. Your owner got to use it to keep you enslaved. Now, the reason this matters is right here. How many people in the chat have seen this before and read this book, Immigration and the Remaking of Black America? This is important because a lot of you guys only know what you see. That's what happens when you grow up with a cell phone and a TV. But there is a world that was here before you got here. And in that world, there were no Africans here. Nearly none, let me say. I don't care what Marcus Garvey was talking about. There were nearly no Caribbeans here. When I say nearly no, I mean nominal, if none. The census data that he pulls in this book, Todd Hamilton, shows you right here. The growth of Caribbeans, which is the dashed line, did not happen until probably around 1980. The growth of Africans, which is the dotted line, did not happen until right around 1990. You are talking to people that did not get here until the Cosby Show came on. Okay. For a lot of people, this framework is necessary because they built their identity as if Africans been coming to America since 1920, as if Caribbeans have been coming to America in large numbers since 1910 because there was Malcolm X and there was Stokely Carmichael. Okay. The use of an individual to reframe the culture of a nation of people that have been enslaved and oppressed has been used to weaponize how you don't understand who you are and what you have a right to claim. And that's starting with yourself and your identity. So you are living under the pressures of not being disliked because of this. You got people of color with like the Sinners movie. We'll talk about that in a second. Why do I keep bringing that up? I keep bringing that up not only because the movie to me was just a bad movie, but in addition because of what we have talked about in prior shows. The Chinese saw blackness as a contamination and argued that, and people be lamb with the Supreme Court.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's not,
Yeah.
and Grace is you know they family basically. You know,
Deserve protection from the contamination of blackness.
The Chinese were not our friends in Deep South Mississippi, yet Ryan Coogler shows them by his own admission as family. He recreated the history of Black folks, showed it to you guys, spat in your face, and now you want to show it in the place where it's dilapidated because they didn't let y'all have stores? You don't know how to respect yourself. Clarksdale pushed for a screening of Sinners. We're going to talk about that in this. She's so happy. She grew up there. She's so happy that they showing it. She don't know that she should be pissed off that they even made it. We got people in the chat on this pop-up on this Sunday. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, this article is up on my Substack. Please go subscribe. Please share my Substack. African Americans are more than just Africans in America. If you're looking for the Substack, it's at Tone Talks. But I wrote the article initially in 2018, and I just edited it some for grammar. In practice, this is more of the article. I'm only going to share a few excerpts. For the whole article, you got to go to the Substack. In practice, this identity has become a one-way door, meaning the identity of being African American. It's a one-way door for us. We get nothing from any country in Africa. Nothing of any measure. Zero. Nobody trades that way. It don't make no sense. And it gives them everything. In fact, you got people here that are Half-African, which is half African, quote unquote, which they don't call themselves there, but half from some Kenyan, Nigerian, and half ADOS. And they will value being Nigerian and oftentimes having never been there, if not for short durations, but oftentimes never been there. Your ADOS parent gave you everything in your life. Somebody should have put that in your heart early. Your schooling, your citizenship, your right to be here, your ability to claim lineage. But so often what you actually see is an inversion where you disrespect the ADOS side. That's the slave side. Okay. Somebody said Issa Rae. Yeah, her mama ran off to Senegal while the riots was raging in LA. She was in Senegal with maids that were damn near probably like lower class because it was a whole different setup. But then she gonna do the LA story. Okay. In practice, this identity has become a one-way door. It grants anyone of African descent access to the cultural space American descendants of slavery created through centuries of struggle. So as we move from being oppressed to Motown, as we move from Motown to the rise of hip hop or even R&B, Michael Jackson, pop culture, what you see is that doorway that happened as a result of hundreds of years of pushing and struggling. But because you created the African American identity, talk about it. People that get here in 1990 step into that and then say, I'm going to be Boyego and be in Star Wars. I'm going to play the lady in Sinners movie that is for the big black woman that's supposed to come from Clarksdale, Mississippi. And y'all going to clap for it. Even though I'm Nigerian. By what right? I'm going to play Harriet Tubman. Oh, not only that, we're going to make Viola Davis play Nasika, the slave trader. Okay, how crazy is this? You got Viola playing the slave trader and Woman King. That's what they were. They were slave traders. I don't care what the movie misrepresented. There's something going on in Hollywood where they're going to make slave traders into heroes. In Woman King, they're going to make Chinese store owners that saw us as contamination, our family, and sinners, and y'all not asking questions why they doing all this in Hollywood. And talking about thank you for showing it in Clarksdale. Whole city broken down economically. Looked like a broken tire. Okay. And I'm sitting here going through this discussion because for some people, it brings about an awakening. Please support the channel. I forgot to tell you that part. So often with these shows that aren't about pop culture, YouTube takes them, demonetizes them. They did that with my last video that I just did. I did it on some topic. But nonetheless, I'm just telling you, guys support the channel. Support the channel. Go to my tonetalks.net. Thank you so much. Whatever I know it's hard times. But people are learning, and this is one post that was left for my Substack. Fascinating read, well worth your time. Now I fully understand why Black Brits portraying historic African-American figures such as Harriet Tubman is such a bone of contention. You think that everybody understands that Obama was Kenyan. I said this when he was in 2008 when he was running. And I got a lot of pushback. I mean, people was confused. My own great aunt, he black though. We don't know, never seen a black person. Look, he was a white Kenyan American that inherited $500,000 from his white grandma that had a bank that might have been tied up in redlining. How in the hell do you celebrate that? You still celebrating today. What does that mean for American descendants of slavery? In practice, this identity has become a one-way door. It grants anyone of African descent access to the cultural space American descendants of slavery created through centuries of struggle without offering ADOS reciprocal access to anything of any measure in any African nation. It allows African immigrants to benefit from policies like affirmative action, measures originally intended as restitution for the injustices ADOS Black Americans endured. In his 1965 commencement, can we get to it today? I'm gonna come to you, chat. I see y'all in there. At Howard University, President Lyndon B. Johnson spoke directly to this need. Speaking about affirmative action, he said, but freedom is not enough. You do not wipe away the scars of centuries by saying, now you are free to go where you want. You do not take away a person who for years has been hobbled. In what way was Barack Obama hobbled? In what way was Kamala Harris hobbled? In what way? By America. They weren't. That is the problem with this identity. It buries you. African American has buried ADOS under a false facade. Our first Black president wasn't ADOS. Our first Black vice president wasn't ADOS. Our first Black press secretary wasn't ADOS. Our first Black attorney general was not ADOS. And y'all ain't got no problems with it. This idea of universal Blackness also played a role in electing Barack Obama, the nation's first quote unquote Black president. But while he is indeed Black, Obama is not African American in the lineage based sense. He is Kenyan American. The distinction matters. Caller, what's your name? Where are you calling from? 910.
Man, what's going on, Mr. Antonio? This is Christian from Fayetteville, North Carolina. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Just doing this show on this Sunday about African Americans are more than just Africans in America. Give me your take on it.
Absolutely. I got a beautiful example for you because everything you just said is so incredibly true, and it hits people in ways that they don't want to realize.
Can I say something? Can I say something? I hate to jump in. I want you to tell me. I remember I was talking, Van Lathan, is that his name? He called me. We talked for like 2 hours, bro. And I was teaching this man about being ADOS, and I don't think he really gets it. Then you don't repeat none of it. And leave out where you learned it, because he's talking about his friend. He had this confusion too about a friend that was African. I was trying to slow it down for him about the realities of being ADOS. And it's just weird because everybody then takes these concepts and forgets, dude, you didn't understand it before. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So I had an experience where my local state senator had posted something recently about some stuff I guess that was going on with Angel Reese, and do a comparison saying how much people hate Black women, and then said this is why Kamala didn't get elected. I asked a very simple question. Madam Senator, what was good about Kamala, specifically for Black Americans? Instead of answering the question, she then began on this tirade of attacking me, saying that I was some sort of Trump supporter, and then proceeded to talk about that I don't care about Black women, that I didn't care about my family, because I didn't want to support this Jamaican Brahmin that cosplayed as my community.
But pause for a second. Pause for a second. We don't just have a gig economy because Obama didn't do anything. His administration is a core element of gig. Go look up David Plouffe, Plouffe. I think he was a speechwriter. He became a top executive at gigs at Uber. Go look up Tom Perez and the labor secretary and how he didn't block Uber from being counted in the labor data. Go look up Barack Obama's Obamazation of Uber. He is the footstool which Uber was announced, and your kids now drive it, and it's because you voted for him. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So I said all of these things, and instead of who I believe some of these women were activists, some of these women were elected officials or former elected officials, instead of them coming around and saying, yeah, that makes sense, they talking about, oh, well, you just don't support Black people. And then on top of that, this is when it got interesting. Then got folks talking about, see, this is what the Willie Lynch letter wanted all along. Well, here's the problem if you read the Willie Lynch letter. All of that was division based on stuff that was superficial. Kamala being Indian and Jamaican is not superficial. right?
And also coming from highly educated professional parents in both cases. Like my parents had me at 16.
Exactly.
At 16, they were not college educated, and I ain't really had no relationship with the pops like that. Let me let it go. I'm gonna go to keep going because I want to continue the show. So as we talk about this discussion, we talk about it again in the context of a world where our identity, this is a Kenyan writer, was and still is ingrained in ethnicity, not in skin color. It explains why most Africans experience being called Black or African for the first time when they come to America. Many of you have no idea that this is the truth because it's played off like this ain't the truth. That African Americans, meaning ADOS, Black Americans, meaning ADOS, American descendants of slavery, are more than just Africans in America. That's not to say we're more of people than people that come from Nigeria or Kenya. No, we're not defined by being African American like a European American or a Chinese American or an Asian American, I should say. I don't know how this all set in, but what it leads to is this right here again. I showed it earlier. You got two pressures. You got one side, Pan-Africanism. The other side, people of a color agenda. We see it show up with sinners, and y'all done drove y'all crazy. Y'all parading and dancing around for a sinners movie that disrespected you. But it's okay. I'll clear it up. I did a primer probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, a year ago. In that primer, I summarized everything that's in the ADOS article, or the African Americans are more than just Africans in America article that's on my Substack, because I wrote it initially back in 2018. And I want to read that primer to you, a brief primer on Blackness in America. You can find this on Twitter. Black immigrants are not Black Americans nor African American, and this isn't meant in a divisive way or derogatory way. I am saying this is how they identify from personal experience. In the chat, how many people know somebody who is Nigerian American that just calls themselves Nigerian? For that matter, who's African and calls themselves Nigerian? Never been there. I do. And with some subsets like Nigerian, they may at sometimes choose to not even add the American and just be Nigerian. And for some, that is their preference, even if they're born here in America. The lack of clarity around Blackness has been the playground of the Black immigrant. Look at Issa Rae. This woman is anchored in being Senegalese. That's what was in Maryland, Potomac when she lived there, a Senegalese community. That's what was in Senegal. And the biracial that has one white wealthy parent, because all you need is one. So what do I mean? If Nicole Hannah-Jones has one white wealthy parent, when it's time to inherit from that granddaddy that she don't talk about, the white granddaddy, it just comes, you white. You get the same as your other white people. You don't get half of it because you have Black. When Jordan Peele, when his mama died, he gonna get what his mama had. When Obama grandmama died, the money came to Obama. Just like any white man, money would come. But yet, we all Black and Black and Black and Black. Okay. Creating a sort of fence straddling that gave you Obama and Kamala and so many others. So on this day, we add some basics so everyone is clear on race, including some Black folks that lack exposure. The lack of clarity around Blackness has been the playground of the Black immigrant again. African Americans and Black Americans are terms used to identify the American descendant of slavery, or ADOS. These are terms for the lost progeny of American slavery. They are not terms that for people that recently migrated from a specific country. Does everybody in the chat understand this? Because I'm slowing it down because I don't care if you're 75 or if you're 15. Nobody is explaining it the way I'm about to explain it. As is the case with the Kamala and Obama fathers, both respectively coming from Jamaica and Kenya to attend elite schools in America through the doorway of what? ADOSness. That's why the schools were even open for them to go to. Entering a post-Jim Crow era. Also, American Blackness in this era has loopholes whereby someone with a single whole white parent can inherit and receive full in-life gifts like their full white sisters and brothers and recreate narratives while leaving out these truths. Talk about it, Hannah-Jones. 1619. We now have a version of one drop rule that works in reverse, whereby a white parent can lift you into whiteness so completely, one of them being white. You had college play, received an inheritance from wealth that was born from black oppression and beyond. In summation, black is not flat, but it also has some realities that requires to get honest. And that honesty is framed inside of the top of this show. African Americans are more than just Africans in America. Now, I've read excerpts. Again, go read the full article on my Substack. But I want to move forward and talk about the other side of the road, the people of color side. So there is this push and this agenda that comes out of the supposedly far left, but comes out of this agenda to flatten out ADOS folk. Now they're gonna flatten us on one side with the Pan-Africanism, but on the other side is to make everybody the same. They don't talk about the Native Americans having in ratio the same amount of slaves as the white folk. I've shown that to you before. They don't talk about, come on, the Chinese grocery store owners in the Sinners movie not being our friends, but seeing us as a contamination.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's not,
Yeah.
you know, and Grace is you know they family basically. You know.
Deserve protection from the contamination of blackness.
Why do I know that? Because it was in legal cases. What they'll do is go find one Chinese woman who had a best friend that was black and then try to use that to write an article and say, oh, they got along. No, tell me about the litigation. What litigation, Tone? What are you talking about? I'm talking about this right here. I'm talking about Lum v. Rice. Martha Lum, a Chinese student in Mississippi, was barred from a white school. The family sued not for integration, but to claim that Chinese were not black and therefore should be allowed to go to white schools. The claim was that Chinese were not colored and thus should not be subjugated to the same educational exclusion as black students. In the litigation, they argue that we are a contamination. ADOS Black Americans. But that's not the only thing that happened. In addition to that, so again, I'm talking about the African American problem here, because it is a problem. In addition, the only reason the Chinese were in the Delta, and I've shown that in a prior show, is to oppress blacks. Chinese brought in as a racial buffer. After the abolition of slavery and during Reconstruction, white Southern elites sought ways to retain social and economic control in the Mississippi Delta. This included recruiting Chinese immigrants as labor replacements and some mall merchants, deliberately inserting them into a racialized social order. So they deliberately moved them into ownership of stores to maintain control economically over the ADOS black population. Part of the reason that Clarksdale looks dilapidated and the black folks are so poor is because of the Chinese. And Ryan Coogler showed them as your family, and you celebrated and showed me that you happy that they gonna show Sinners in your town that ain't got no movie theater. African Americans are more than just Africans in America. This woman said, who knew that my initial tweet about the open letter started by Tyler Yarbrough, followed by a story I wrote that quickly went viral, would become the catalyst for screenings of Sinners in my hometown? You just want to be an entertainment blogger. You need to go do the journalism about the 8-minute video that he based his entire understanding of Chinese grocers that didn't talk about the Lamb case, that didn't talk about the contamination element of how they saw black folks, the Chinese, and how Ryan Coogler used 8 minutes of video that left out all the truth of what the video should have said. And that was his Chinese expert. I showed it on YouTube. Clarksdale pushed for a screening of Sinners. They're getting one next week. Residents of the town where the film is based will get to watch it alongside its director, Ryan Coogler. Why am I talking about this? Because of this. It's a non-existent identity pressured on both sides by Pan-Africanism and people of color. It gets to the point where people celebrate their own breakdown. You're supposed to be protesting and you celebrating. You doing a parade when you're supposed to be out there with signs protesting, get this out of my town. Can we talk? This spectacle makes no sense. Sinner's movie wasn't history at all. By encouraging Chinese grocers, white planters, and town leaders managed to keep economic control away from the black population while still servicing it. Lowing Mississippi Chinese. So the book is called The Mississippi Chinese. The author is Lowen. It was made in 71. Ryan Coogler did not read the book, or he didn't base his movie on the book. It's not a, now people would say it's a vampire movie. Then why are we showing it like a history piece? When I did Freeway Crack in the System, I took it to Selma, Alabama, and showed it. It's a documentary. It's a documentary about the tragedy that happened with the crack cocaine epidemic. This ain't a documentary. You showing a fictional vampire movie that recreated the history and spat on black folks by making us family and friends with the Chinese grocers that were brought to block our ability to have stores. And the people there want you to show a screening because they didn't have movie theaters to watch the movie. That is the consequence of not framing that African Americans are more than just Africans in America. Total disrespect of self. We got a whole set of things going on, and people don't even look. Lowen James, the Mississippi Chinese between black and white. Lowen details how Chinese immigrants were used to maintain the racial hierarchy as white planters lost enslaved labor. You no longer get to say this ain't a history movie. They're treating it like history and parading it around in Clarksdale. Now, it was always a problem to me. Don't nobody accept this but Adolf's people. Don't know Jewish people accept this. I don't even think the Chinese would accept it. You can't show this. They're not going to see this. As white planters lost enslaved labor, they experimented with Chinese laborers and later encouraged them into the grocery trade to serve black communities without empowering them economically. In the chat, for everybody that saw the Sinners movie, did Ryan Coogler display that? Because he says that they were their friends, and he did not. By encouraging Chinese grocers, white planters, and town leaders managed to keep economic control away from the black population. And y'all celebrating that. You want something so bad that you'll take anything. By the 40s, there were over 400 Chinese-run grocery stores in the Mississippi Delta. These stores primarily served customers, black customers, yet black people were systemically denied capital, loans, and business licenses needed to run similar stores. 400 Chinese grocery stores are like 723 people, Chinese people, half a store per person. 90% of the customers were black, 0% of the store ownership in many towns by black Americans due to terror, redlining, and legal restrictions. I spit on that movie. The reason why I bring that in this show is because of the Clarksdale push to have a movie that doesn't allow you to see why you today ain't got no movie theater in your town. And it's so run down. You don't have a thriving set of black grocers, and we should own those stores, and they should be national chains. You got black folks that don't know nothing about being ADOS, but know everything about being African American without ever going to any part of Africa, and likely not knowing anyone in their family that will ever go to any part of Africa. These are identity-less people. I'm not going to keep you guys too long. I just wanted to come to you, have a show about this article, about this concept, about these narratives that are going around. And I wanted to have you understand it's important to support the Substacks and read, because I know we do the videos, but read the Substacks, read Yvette Carnell's Substacks, read the books. In the chat, I challenge everyone in the chat. Don't take my word for it. Go read this book by Todd Hamilton, and you'll see they weren't here. Go read the litigation. You don't have to take my word for it. Go read the litigation on Lum v. Rice, then go watch Sinners again and see how mad you are. Not only at the movie, but the fact that you didn't know the facts of nothing and you watching this thing clapping. They called us contaminations and they should be separated from us. And Ryan Coogler said they're our friends. You can do that to a people that don't understand that African Americans are more than just Africans in America. Please go to tonetalks.net, subscribe, donate, and share. Thank you so much for tuning in.